okay, more All-Ireland senior football final build-up, but it's a bit different. So I was passed through Anniscall, County Kerry, and this man beside me got in touch, Paul Kennedy, and you'll hear from his accent. Well, he's living in Anniscall, but he's not from Anniscall. So Paul, you might tell us a little bit about your background. So you're a performer, you're a Shanachie, but maybe a little bit about your geographical background, I suppose.
Geographical background is simple. I'm a quality hybrid. Quality hybrid, Shane. My mother was from Dublin, and my father was from West Kerry. He wasn't the eldest on the farm, so he went up to Dublin to get a job. He was a guard in Rathmines, met my mother, lived his life in both places, and I've always had the graw for Anniscall, so it made sense to come down here and to move. And my father was also a very famous Kerry footballer.
So you tell us about your dad. Paddy was your father, Paddy Kennedy.
Yes, yeah. Paddy was. He would have been very famous in the sense of a superstar of his time. Won the All Ireland. 37, 39, 40, 41, and he was captain in 46.
Right.
And I think he played in about 10 or 11 finals. There was draws. In fact, they would have had a 5 in a row if it wasn't for they drew against Galway in 38 and lost the replay.
Okay.
And I won't mention the Polo Grounds.
The famous Polo Grounds finals. Yeah. He would have played in that one as well.
Yeah, he played in that one. There's so many incredible stories about that in terms of, guys who were coming from, like electricity hadn't arrived in West Kerry, and these guys are going off to New York. There was, it was an amazing time, and I was very lucky because I was able to go over with my mum. My dad passed in 79, so long ago, but they had the 50th anniversary of the Polo Grounds, which was in New York. Right. So that was in 97, and half of both teams were still alive, and they played the match as if it was like, every single play that they still remembered. And it reminded me when I was reading an article there with James McCarthy, who was talking about how his missus tells him, you have a terrible memory, but you remember every play of a game. And it's funny how it's just, it's hardwired, and just one
memory.
Yeah.
So would you said your dad died in 79, would you have had stories either first person or passed on to you from your dad, or what was the... I'm sure he liked talking about his Gaelic background, presumably when he got the chance.
He was pretty humble about it outside the house, but he was he'd have no problem banging the drum inside the house. And for years we thought he was winding us up, that he had caught a ball out of an aeroplane. And this was the whole mist, but it actually happened that there was a big exhibition game, and the ball was an airplane flew low and dropped the ball in. A gimmick, to get more people into the ground, because that was so. That was in I think it was the 30s, late 30s, early 40s. But picked it out of the air. He was a great fielder, so he was. I remember talking to Mick O'Connell, who was saying, your dad was the man he looked up to and regarded as the best midfielder for Kerry. So that was nice praise indeed. But as my father would always say, if it wasn't for Mick O'Connell, he would have been forgotten. Because he brought me to the All-Ireland. I actually was in Croke Park. I watched. My dad sat me down to watch Mick playing in an All-Ireland, and just says, have a look at him now. You'll have an idea how good I was. But to everybody else, he'd, sure. Sure. If it wasn't for O'Connell, I'd been long forgot. But the beauty was then also was the Dublin Kerry rivalry, because my father was a Kerry footballer. My brother shouted for Kerry, and fair dues to him. But I went because, as my father said, when he brought me into Croke Park in the Ort Collier, his old playmates of his, fellow players go, Jesus Christ, Paddy, what's he doing with the blue hat in him? And my dad would just go, his mum's from Dublin, he's born in Dublin, and he went to school in Dublin. And now here I am living in Kerry because I prefer it to Dublin, but I'll still be shouting for Dublin in Croke Park. I haven't missed them in an All-Ireland yet. That's amazing.
So does it get I'm sure there's a bit of crack around the village, and especially with yourself, I'm sure you hear all about it when you're... do you fly the Dublin flag out the car at the house, or what way does that work? Do you keep it quiet?
I keep it more or less quiet. Everybody knows, who I'm going to shout for, because they've been slagged since, coming down in the 70s when the big rivalry was on, the great crack with the cousins. Yeah. And when we won in 2011, I was texting them away going, it's, this is the sweetest of all, the last time we beat Kerry in the championship. Elvis was still warm, and because I took as they say in the barren years, I took an awful lot of flack from them, and I'm still love the game, and my father did instill me in one very simple thing: the game is more important than the rivalries were great and it'd bring you on, But I'd love to see him now what he'd make at Clifford, because Clifford is worth the admission fee. Even if even he's playing against you, you just go, wow, let's just enjoy it. The last player I saw like that in a Kerry jersey would have been Maurice Fitzgerald, and and when you see the greats, you just doff your cap to them. And I won't mention all the greats in Dublin because we were a bit spoiled, to get a few at the same time. But
you haven't snuck the 6 in a row reference in just yet. It's taken a while.
No, you put it in.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah,
I had to bring it up.
Well, because I remember saying to some small little Dublin guy, and his father was from Armagh. I remember just turning to the little Dublin kid and say, "Wait a second, you're getting used to this. You're getting several. This is what you're rare to, but don't worry, things move in cycles, and God knows we're in the wilderness long enough, and it's nice to come around and the Sunday be a good game. They both want to play good football, so let's see how it goes."
It's funny because I was chatting to Sean Potts in Dublin City during the week. Great musician, great Dublin man, great Dublin GA fan, and he was saying he was chatting to Paddy O'Shea after the 95 All Ireland win against Tyrone for the Dubs, and Paddy's it was a slag, but he said to him, that it's only an All Ireland when you beat Kerry. It'll be a real All Ireland for Dublin when they beat Kerry in a final, and of course that happened in 2011. But it must mean more when, as a Dublin fan, especially for you living in Kerry, and we want to be quiet here, we wouldn't want to be saying things too loudly, but it must be all the more special for a Dub to beat Kerry.
Let's be honest, they're the aristocrats. They're the bullseye on the GAA dartboard in football, because every single county they'll say the same thing. Every little kid will dream of winning an All Ireland for his county, but it'll be against Kerry in the final. It's just they are what they are, and they are for a very good reason, because they're football is religion down here. It's more important. You see the kids really, really playing it and really getting passionate about it, and that's why you want to beat Kerry, because they play a good game and they play a hard game. And they play it, there's a lot of old timers here now who won't be watching the game because it's turned into basketball, but that's their view on it.
Yeah, the old school view. Finally, Paul, how do you see the match going? There's heart over head, and I guess you have a little bit of both, in both Kerry and Dublin in your heart and your head. But how do you see the match playing out on Sunday? It's a tough one to call.
I think everybody's right in saying it's a tough one to call, and it's a really interesting one because we're all fascinated. Because I was in the pub last night in Lisbole talking to guys about, what's gonna, who's gonna mark Clifford? How's Con gonna do? There's so many good players, and if one guy, doesn't show up, or you could have somebody like Colin Basquel who's just, almost come out of, with his second coming. You go, wow, he could. Everybody could. The other thing is that you can't throw a whole lot of fellas on Clifford because there's too many good forwards around. Yeah. It's going to be. It's hard to call because it's going to be a whole lot about the hunger. Because Kerry celebrated that semi-final win last year correctly, because they just went, at long last we beat the beast that Dublin football had become, and now Dublin are gone revenge. So, and it's the old rivalry. Yeah, happy days.
Absolutely.
Let's have a good game.
100%. We could have a second game if it goes to a replay, so you never know the tightness of these two teams. Paul, brilliant stuff, and the story of your dad, Paddy, is amazing, and it's right that we tell it. So listen, enjoy the match as best you can on Sunday.
It'd be rude not to, Shane. We're going to have, let's hope it's a ding-dong.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff, Paul. Thanks a million.